Anime. The world-renowned culture synonymous with Japan is arguably also one of its biggest sources of income. Outside of that, we have fashion, technology, idols, food, shrines and temples. These various cultures make people outside of Japan interested in packing their bags and experiencing them for themselves. And what's stopping them? What's stopping you? That's the question that I've asked myself when I've seen images such as these. Hordes of people. So many that you might not even be able to see the floor. A density so high that security guards and police need to be hired to maintain order. Some of these areas are completely normal places, the types that ordinary people use on the daily. Some of these are places known worldwide for their cultural significance, and some of them are simply just places that have been featured in an anime. And by that, I mean a lot of places. I think you can start to see the issue here. There's just way too many people. So many in fact that can make life almost impossible to live around these parts. So today, I want to take a deep dive into anime and its involvement in the over-tourism problem in Japan, if it even exists, and evaluate what we can learn from the current situation in Japan, from a culture that rakes in millions of dollars, that for better or worse, played an influential role in shaping cities and tourist spots all over Japan. But first, let's take a step back here and see where it all started. You see, back in 2013, then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, in the first meeting of the Cool Japan Promotion Council, announced a bill intended to create funds to display Japan's attractiveness overseas, as a way to break the cultural and economic stagnation that Japan was experiencing at the time. This is actual data provided by the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry of Japan in 2012, when outlining the roadmap and rationale for the Cool Japan strategy, showing how they were forecasting Japan's real GDP growth rate as continuing to decline into the 2020s, as well as a 55 trillion yen decrease in nominal GDP in the next 3 years. Here's what the Japanese government are facing: a continued period of stagnation, loss of jobs, businesses and industries not being able to mature and catch up to its overseas counterparts, all in the face of a population decline and decreased growth potential in the economy. So what do? They start to pivot. They start to see the potential in unearthing domestic and foreign demand, completely transforming the industrial structure of several of these cultures, all in the name of securing new income sources for the economy, the creation of new jobs, and in their words, most importantly, lead to regional economic revitalization. And this is where we get to the part of what I care most about in the story. The one tool, the one culture that they leverage from which there is no escape from when we talk about Japan, and that is anime. When I say the word anime, many of you might be thinking about series and movies such as Demon Slayer, Spirited Away, and most importantly Slam Dunk and Your Name. As for me, I'm partial to Psycho-Pass, but that's besides the point. Although experts are mixed on the effects and successes of the Cool Japan program, in my opinion it is undeniable that it's helped the anime industry thrive domestically and overseas, especially seeing how the government had provided emergency economic support to the anime and arts industries during the COVID-19 pandemic. The records even show how in 2021, the revenue of the Japanese anime industry had generated a whopping 1.31 trillion yen overseas, with economic experts describing it as a booming enterprise, specifically linked to a strong increase in overseas sales since the mid-2010s, when the Cool Japan program had started. Going back to the series and movies I mentioned beforehand, especially focusing on Slam Dunk and Your Name, the former having over 170 million copies in circulation globally by 2017, and the latter raking in 80.5 million US in China in just 23 days, 8.1 million US in South Korea within 5 days, and a 5 million gross in the US market. Both series had completely dominated the global market. And it doesn't end here, because we're just barely scratching the surface of the success that anime has seen internationally and domestically, because these are just two specific examples. I hope from here you can start to see the bigger picture. What happens when you have a government that's actively promoting a culture that's seen success internationally and domestically, as well as a desire to see economic growth domestically, and incidentally having real-life locations featured in these globally renowned mediums? Luckily for us, the answer is right in our face. What you're seeing here are the scenes that the locals at Kamakura face on their daily commute in this intersection. Security guards posted by the government sharing expenses with Enoshima Electric Railway, all for the sake of stopping tourists blocking the road and taking pictures. And why? Because it was featured on Slam Dunk. Kamakura is seeing littering, public transport congestion, the blocking of traffic, and even trespassing on school grounds simply because they were featured in the series. Comparatively, the city of Hida faced a boom in popularity after the hit movie Your Name, being inundated with tourists, but they instead managed to leverage this boom to revitalize their region, boost the number of buses they have traveling to the city, and see an improvement to their economy. But what about the places that can't appropriately manage over-tourism? the places that don't have the funds, the infrastructure, or the personnel. From my readings, tourism literature does suggest that over-tourism can lead to changes in the cultural and physical environments of these areas, as well as acknowledging that it can negatively affect the lives and culture of the residents of those areas. Furthermore, even the World Tourism Organization has made it quite clear that sustainable tourism has to improve the quality of life of the community in the area, provide a high-quality experience for the tourists, and preserve the quality of the environment and community, as both parties rely on those areas. In fact, research has shown that rural areas in Japan have yet to reap any benefits that come from the gargantuan influx of inbound tourists within the past decade, even in light of the increase of tourist numbers from 2009 at 7 million to 30 million in 2019. So now you have the data and literature related to over-tourism in Japan, but can we even pin some of this blame onto anime? Well, maybe. Looking at the data, the Japan Tourism Agency surveyed approximately 140,000 tourists in 2018, and with 4.6% of them clearly stating that they visited an anime location or film location in Japan, we can approximate that to at least 1.43 million people flooding into these sites from the 31.19 million tourists Japan had recorded that year. This brings me back to the original question that I had at the beginning of this video, which is there even a link between anime and tourism? We have the clear-cut cases of Hida and Kamakura, and we have the data to back that up, with a whopping 1.43 million tourists going to these areas. But what do Japanese people and tourists really think? Is this really the case? What better way for us to find out than to go ourselves and hit the streets of Akihabara to see what the people think? Hi, so I was wondering, was anime influential in you coming to Japan in the first place?
No, it was not.
Maybe at first.
It definitely gave me the idea of coming to Japan. It wasn't the sole reason I came over.
In your trip to Japan, do you plan on visiting a place related to anime at all?
Not this trip, no.
Accidentally wandered into places. Like I ended up at the Kimi no Namae like staircase on accident. On this trip, no, I don't think so.
Our friend wanted us to go to the Your Name staircase during our trip, so we'll probably head there at some point. We're gonna find the KFC where Gojo and Geto did the thing.
And lastly, do you think by people going and visiting these places that are featured in anime, they're actually contributing to over-tourism in Japan?
I think so. I would agree with that, yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You're infringing upon like other people's like just way of being. People live here, you got to respect that. And then having so many tourists come here for like they're here for tourism, but they're here for very specific reasons which might get in the way of people's normal day-to-day life.
Do you think that's like a problem at all or not really?
I don't know if it's a problem because that's probably helping to contribute to the economy, I guess, especially in this area where it's very famous. Anime is very famous. But if anything that's too much is going to end up being a problem at some point. So maybe it's not good for long term, but
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely like positive and negatives to tourism in general. You just have to sort of have the, structure and like foundation to like accommodate that sort of thing. And it takes a while for that to happen.
Absolutely. Like, for example, Canberra is it's the capital, but it's very small, and we get a massive tourist boom every once in a while, seasonal, and we see a massive revenue increase. So even though tourists can get in the way, it is very good for the economy depending on where you are. Yeah, it is a 50-50. It's like a flip side.
オーバーツーリズムはあなたの生活に影響していますか？
影響は多少してます。理由としては東京で働いているので、結構働く上で結構お昼ご飯行くとか夜ご飯行くとかでも結構そこの混み具合とかにも影響はしてきてくるかなと思うので、それがダメどうこうではないんですけど影響はしてきてるかなと思います。
言うほど影響はしてないです。
外国人はアニメが好きで日本に来ている人が多いと思いますか？
多いと思います。今秋葉にいるので余計感じてるんですけどそういったカルチャー、日本のカルチャーを感じに来る方が非常に多いんじゃないかなって思いますね。
多いんじゃないんですかね。自分の好きなバンドも結構日本のアニメ好きでタトゥー入れたりなんかしてるんで、多分そうだと思います。
このデータは問題ですか？どんな問題が起こると思いますか？
いやいい問題しかないんじゃないかなって思ってて、日本人が今少子高齢化進んでいく中で日本の文化を外に出すっていうのがなかなか母数が少なくなってきてる中で難しいと思うので、日本の文化を感じてもらってその母国に来 来ていただける方の母国にこうなんだろうね、そのカルチャーを伝播させるっていう意味ではいい意味しかないんじゃないかなと個人的には思います。
問題起こりますかね。起こらないと思います。そんな多分大丈夫です。はい。
From all of this, I can definitely say that there is a link between the influence of anime and over-tourism, especially with how many of the interviewees had stated that they wanted to visit the location seen in the movie Your Name as the most popular spot that they wanted to visit, as well as citing anime as a reason for having an interest and coming to Japan. There are both positives and negatives that Japan sees, such as a boost in the economy and spreading the culture of Japan globally. However, Japan must be careful in managing tourism as to not allow the disruption of places of great cultural significance to Japan, whilst promoting sustainable tourism to ensure that the greater Japanese population is not negatively affected. I hope you managed to learn something new from this video, and thank you for watching.